First of all, Dave, it's so good to see you again, man. I hope you and your family are doing well. We were all sort of saying how excited we were to interview you. Like you said, we've all spoken before, and you're seriously like one of the genuinely the nicest guys to talk to. So seriously, thank you so much for coming on ReelBlend. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me.
I want to talk about actors whenever they're writing and directing a film. That decision they have to make whether or not to cast themselves in a movie. Obviously, Clint Eastwood's gone both ways. Ben Affleck's gone both ways. I'm curious, at what point in the process did you have to make that decision? And was there ever a moment where you were going to play one of the brothers?
Yeah, so the truth is, I wasn't originally intending on directing the movie. And at that point, I was going to play the character of Josh that ultimately went to Jeremy Allen White. But when I decided to direct, I just wanted to be able to focus on my responsibilities behind the camera. And I'm glad that I didn't act in it too, because there was plenty on my plate. And in addition to that, Jeremy is so good. And I think people mainly know him from Shameless, and he's been in some smaller movies too, but like, I feel like he hasn't had an opportunity to really kind of show what he can do. And I swear to God, every day he was on set, all of us behind the camera would look at each other and be like, why is this guy not the biggest star in the world? He's just got this really raw, grounded, unpredictable energy.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Every time when I was watching his performance, like, this guy feels like someone I would just know. Like, it's very, very grounded and very real. So one of the things I found that interesting that you did was perspective, manipulating perspective with the audience. As the movie opens, we immediately think the two people we're looking at are a couple based on what's going on in the scene. And then as the film goes along, you continue to manipulate things. There's reveals that are manipulated later on as well. I wanted to ask you, as a storyteller, the power of perspective manipulation with an audience and that push-pull and kind of figuring that out and playing with us and knowing that we're going to think one way and then flip the next way. I found that to be such an interesting theme throughout your film.
Yeah, I wish I had a more intelligent answer for you, but the truth is, it was more intuitive on like whose perspective we wanted to be in at any given moment. And I think what it ultimately did is, when I talk to people who have seen the film, it's really interesting to hear who they latched onto and who they related to. I think it says something about that viewer themselves and their history. Where, for example, I was lucky enough to do an interview with Barry Jenkins about this, and he just kept going on and on about Sheila Van's character because he's experienced, levels of racial profiling. And so that's who he latched onto. And then I talked to a lot of other people who latch onto Alison's character because, for the most part, she is the audience. She is the eyes and ears of the audience, and she's thinking a little more rationally than everyone else. But I hope that answers the question.
Well, like, basically, no, it does. But the idea that in the beginning you want us to think a certain way when we see those two characters, and then you reveal that, and that happens throughout the film. And I think that's an amazing tool as a director to lead us down the path. Is there a push-pull of how long to lead us down a certain path before you flip it?
Well, I think the intention there is to just continually try to keep the viewers on the edge of their seat and not know what's going to happen. Where, when you take a step back and look at the overall premise, it sounds like something you've heard before. Two couples go to a vacation home and then things go wrong. But within that premise, we were like, all right, how can we subvert the genre wherever possible and make things unexpected, whether it be unexpected scares or unexpected relationships where, like you say, in this opening scene, you think that two of the characters are together and ultimately you realize, oh, no, that's not the case. But what it does is it plants this thing in your head where it's like, oh, but what is the relationship between those two characters?
See,
which pays off really well later.
Love that. Yeah. All right, cool.
I mean this as a compliment in 100% fashion, but all three of us were so blown away by how confident this was, as your feature film directorial debut. We have a little text chain going. We were texting each other during our screenings of just like, this is really fucking great. And listen, I saw your Comedy or Die sketch about, getting a Blumpkin from Olivia Munn. So I expected really huge things from you, but this was a huge step. But I want to ask specifically from visually shooting, you use a lot of natural light, a lot of scenes in the darkness. You rely on things like fog to set mood and tension. things that I would assume a director on a set might want to talk themselves out of because it doesn't have a controlled environment. So can you talk about some of the obstacles that come with doing that and how you overcame them?
Yeah, I mean, part of that was because of necessity, because we were a small crew and we couldn't bring giant lights out into the woods. But knowing that we had those limitations, we were like, okay, let's not force something. Let's use what we're working with and try to find the best way forward. And so I was lucky enough to work with this young DP named Christian Spranger, who is going to be the biggest DP in the world. And I'm going to look back one day and be like, I can't believe I got that guy to shoot my first film. Yeah. But he's mainly known for his work on the TV show Atlanta. And if you look at that show, it tells you everything you need to know about him, where if you think about how many productions have filmed in Atlanta over the past decade, and then you look at that show and you're like, oh my God, he found a way to make it look different than anyone else. And it just speaks to his unique eye. And so I really leaned on him a lot throughout this whole process. And he just really gave me the confidence to make bold choices and to we created these longer shots where everyone's in the frame at the same time and it almost feels like a play and the camera's moving in and out. And there are these shots that ultimately are a little scary because we're like, you know what, we probably should go in for coverage, but I think there's something really bold and exciting about just letting this play out and really feeling the tension in the space between all the characters. And so I give the DP a lot of credit.
Weirdly enough, one of my favorite shots in the film is the actual drive to the house and the way you kept two images on the screen at the same time with the car still going and then the motion of the drive. And I was like, I just thought that was such a brilliant thing because it wasn't necessarily a slow dissolve. You just kept two images on the screen at the same time. I was like, that's a really interesting choice. I've seen it before in old school filmmaking, but man, that was freaking awesome, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's an early moment in the film, and it's essentially the drive that takes us from their normal life to this rental home. And so we were like, let's get a little weird with this. Let's set the tone early on so people know this isn't a straightforward thriller. Like, you're going to get some things that are a little outside the box and unexpected.
Dave, I'm going to ask you a question that I actually asked the guys earlier today. Like, is this weird? Is this a weird question? But about 30 minutes into the movie, I legit had to pause it and text the guys because they'd already seen the film. And I said, guys, I need to ask you a question. Is the dog going to be okay? Because I'm such a mass. I don't know if you heard, I had to mute my mic. I don't know if you heard my dog. I'm such a massive dog guy. And whenever I watch like a thriller or a horror film and there are shots of the dog, my first thought is like, something's going to fucking happen to this dog. Like something's going to happen. You got Taylor kind of sneaking around. I don't really know what's going on. And so I kind of just, and so the whole movie, I'm just on tension, yes, I'm 100% captivated, invested in what's happening with the humans, but there's a part of me that's going like, what the fuck is going on with this dog? And I'm curious is that a conscious choice?
Definitely. So
yes, okay.
What's interesting is, and without giving too much away, as a viewer, we, for whatever reason, we're way more invested in the safety of animals than even the humans on screen. Yep. And I'm sure it's because it's like, these are helpless, innocent creatures and like nothing, like you can't do anything bad to them. And so the truth is, there were iterations of the script where there was no dog, and it really was a last second decision to put a dog in there.
Really?
And what it does is exactly what you're saying, where it adds this immediate tension and ultimately it weaves its way into the actual plot too. But where for the most part, it's just like what you're saying is like, don't do anything to this dog.
I literally thought one of the funniest line readings in the movie is Alison when she's now on Molly and she's messing with the hot tub, and she just sort of laughs to herself like, I lost the dog.
Oh yeah.
It's so good at that moment.
That has been the universal biggest laugh.
Oh, no kidding. Really? That's funny. You know, Dave, I'm a pun fan, so the bro puns was something I just really found to be very delightful. And I was just interested to know how many others there were that didn't make it in. And the idea that you gave Alison the best one, which is apps bro, whatever the word, I can't even say it. But was it a design to give her that final one? And also just were there other bro puns that you guys just kind of kept going with?
those were all the ones that we had written out. I let the actors kind of improvise and see what came to mind. I remember Dan throwing out Scarlett Johansson at one point. But yeah, it was always designed for Alison to have that final one, because like it's the brothers kind of doing it together, and then it's like Alison from a distance being like, wait, I can play too. And so it just gives her just this little moment of sweetness.
At the end of the film, it should have said directed by Dave Franco. I don't know why that didn't happen, Dave. Come on, man.
It's a missed opportunity.
Dave Franco joint.
Yes.
That's great.
So Spike Lee's gonna sue somebody.
There is a theory in the horror genre about morality and morally guilty characters, how they can be fodder for slashers. And the innocent or the guilt-free tend to go last longer. And I'm just curious if you bought into that at all when you were putting the story together.
Definitely. And I want to be delicate about how I talk about this, because again, I don't want to give anything away.
Sure.
But if you take a step back, there, these characters, no one's inherently good, no one's inherently bad. They're very real. They're all flawed in their own ways. And so throughout the film, some of them are making more unethical choices than others, but everyone has their moments of like, hey, you made the wrong decision there, and now you're vulnerable. So I guess let's just leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was a conscious choice. Yeah.
So you've actually worked with some of the greatest filmmakers of all time, and my wife and I were actually just rewatching The Disaster Artist the other day because I freaking love that movie, and I was interested to know like what you pull from filmmakers that you've worked with. I mean, specifically, you work with your brother on that film. Were you watching him as a director and like pulling, and like were there things that you pulled from his direction from that film that you utilize here?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've always been the type of actor who has been curious about every step of the process, and I can't help myself. I want to talk to the DP and the writer and the production designer and just like hear about their process and why they're making certain decisions. And I try not to be annoying about it. I try not to overstep my bounds, but I have been like, cherry picking from all these people that I've worked with, knowing that I wanted to do this one day. And so thinking about like the Disaster Artist specifically, I mean, with my brother and Seth Rogen and his crew, like what I took from that film and what I'll do forever is they really set a comfortable environment on set where they encourage every single person to voice their opinion if they think it'll help the film in any way. Mm-hmm. And so essentially there's no egos, and the rule is best idea wins no matter who it's coming from. And so I definitely brought that over to the rental. And in addition to that, I think the smartest thing I did was I really vetted the crew in an extensive way, where obviously I wanted people who were really talented, but on top of that, I needed people who were going to be very friendly, nice people who were going to work their asses off. Because as a first-time director, I needed people whose number one priority was the quality of the film, as opposed to some people who have maybe been around a long time and they just want to get home so they can watch the basketball game. And so it was a very long process putting the crew together. But in the end, I was surrounded by all these really nice, talented people who made my job much easier than it could have been.
I thought you were going to say that you shot rental on 35 and digital room style. Go ahead, Sean.
They were real quick. You know what we realized about that? So Tommy Wiseau, he did that on the
best
room.
thing ever.
And we realized since he did that, he could actually do a 3D version of the room if he wanted. And I think he was thinking about that. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think that he was way ahead of all of us.
Tell him to do it. Someone needs to tell him to actually release the 3D version. If he has a 35 and a digital camera shot of each one, you're totally right. Oh my God.
Wait, my computer messes up and I come back in the conversation. All I hear is a 3D version of the room.
Yeah.
What the shit did I miss?
We were
Dave's inviting us over to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn.
We had a conversation on the show recently about directors and how when they deliver a movie right off the bat, it might be their passion project. They pour their heart and soul into it. And one of the next things that we say to them after is, great, what are you going to do next? Like, what are you directing next, kind of thing. And it's almost unfair to me to just assume that people who direct a film, have a million of them in them. And in fact, you do see some directors who have one or two that are really passionate, that they're passionate about, and then they just stay in the machine. And so I'm curious, coming off of your first one, where do you fall with this? Was it something you just wanted to scratch and now you're content to go back to acting? Or are you sort of looking at scripts and saying, I got to get back out there right away?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. You hear stories about Ari Aster, who has 13 scripts that he just has laying around his house. And so I don't have that many, but I would love to continue directing if I get the chance. And first off, I have a pretty strong idea for a sequel if I'm lucky enough to get the chance to continue this story. But in addition to that, my wife, Alison, and we have actually written a script during the quarantine for me to direct and for her to star in. And it's a romantic comedy. And the reason for that is we love the genre, but just looking at romantic comedies, especially over the last decade or so, I just feel like the bar has been set really low, where there's this tendency to make them or just give them this overly bright aesthetic, right? And also the characters and the storylines are very silly and nothing's grounded. And so we started looking at some of the classics like When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, Pretty Woman. And first off, they're very grounded. The acting is legitimately great. And they're all shot like dramas. Like they look good. And so we started thinking about like why no one approaches romantic comedies from this like more tasteful, smart perspective. And so that's what we're trying to do with this one. But yeah, we're basically just trying to find any excuse to collaborate again, just because we had such a great time together.
That's awesome.
Dave, I want to ask about the trailer to this movie, because whenever I found out that we were going to get to interview you, I wasn't super familiar with the film. So I was like, before I watch the screener, I just want to kind of pop on and see what the movie's about. And I feel like the coolest compliment I can give the movie is that the trailer gives away nothing. In fact, I was bragging about your movie to a buddy of mine. He went and watched the trailer and he was like, that looks cool. I'm like, no, dude, like, not screw the trailer, but I'm telling you, like, the movie isn't, like, the best parts aren't given away. I'm curious about that balance between, like, obviously you want to draw people in and you want to sort of show them that this is something that they've never seen before, but you don't want to put the goods out there. You don't want to put everything out, like, in 2.5 minutes.
So trailers are obviously very tricky, where you're like, I need to make it intriguing enough to bring people in, but I don't want to give away too much. And especially with this film, where there are turns that we want to hold on to. I was really proud of in regards to the trailer is that we don't give away anything in regards to the character dynamics and any of that. But I think what you're saying is accurate in that the trailer, it does kind of just look like, oh, okay, this is a story that feels somewhat familiar. But I think what makes it hopefully stand out is that you see the care that's being put into all of the details, where you see that it's beautifully shot by my DP. You see that there's real acting in it, as opposed to a lot of genre films that are a little over the top and the characters are like these two-dimensional stock characters. It's like you feel that there's a little more weight to it all, and hopefully intriguing enough for people to be like, oh, I'm curious to see, and then when they watch it, hopefully they'll be like, oh, there's way more layers than I even expected, and it'll be even more satisfying than they thought.
Dave, I'll end on this. One thing I really loved about the film was the score. It was almost like a heartbeat, like pumping as I was watching it. And I found myself almost in a rhythm watching your film, like in a very interesting way. And I think I say this sometimes when I talk to filmmakers, but I truly mean it. you utilize score as a leading character. It's part of the story. And I just wanted to talk to you about the idea of where to input those elements and kind of like as the tension builds and building up that heartbeat quality to it. 'Cause I think the score really does play such a pivotal role in the film. But also going back to the first question I asked you, you can mess with perception and manipulation with score as well. So can you talk about just like directing your score almost like a character?
Yeah, I'm so happy that you felt that way. The score is one of my favorite elements of the film. These guys, Danny Bensi and Sonder Jurians, who are geniuses, and they've worked in the genre space a few times before with Enemy, Martha Marcy May Marlene, Simon Killer, and most recently the HBO series The Outsider.
Enemy is a masterpiece, by the way.
Oh, The
Denis
Outsider's
Villeneuve.
fantastic,
I
too.
love Enemy, man. Oh man,
Totally.
Yeah.
And like their superpower is that they are able to create such tension with such simple sounds. And like you said, there's like a long stretch in the latter half of the film where there's this underlying rhythm that almost feels like a heartbeat, right? And what it does, like kind of psychologically, and not to get too heady about this, but it makes you kind of aware of your own heartbeat, which in turn makes your heartbeat kind of go a little quicker. And then before you know it, you're like feeling a little kind of short of breath. And they just know how to just manipulate the audience in that way. And also, I just feel like they approach the genre in a different way than most composers, where yes, they know where to lean into kind of the heavier kind of like sting moments, but they try to stay away from that wherever possible, where it feels all a little more elegant and just for lack of a better word, just a little strange. And it just makes you feel a little off kilter, and it just adds to the whole experience and just the tension that you're feeling.
Yeah, man. Well, we appreciate that. I think our time is up, unfortunately, with you.
Our
but
time is up. I want to,
yeah.
I want to plug the fact that the rental is going to be available on VOD on July 24th, but also something really cool that not a lot of people get to say: a select drive-ins. How cool is that?
That's awesome. This is a perfect drive-in movie.
It's a good one. It's a good one. We feel lucky that, it actually lends itself well to that environment. And yeah, we're going to be, the weird thing about it is, like, as much as I want to be playing in more standard theaters throughout the country, we're going to ultimately probably play in more theaters than originally planned because of the driving component.
That's so cool, man. You're bringing them back.
Thank you, man.
I genuinely, I'm so happy that you guys loved it, and I appreciate all the thorough questions and smart questions, and it means a lot to me.
Yeah, Dave, I'll just say thank you so much for coming on the show, and how much we really appreciate having you, and tell everybody to check out the rental as soon as they can.
Thank you, guys.